here's my next one. Let's see if I can get that one going too. I have a whole collection of these that I take out and put out every Christmas. Let's see if this one works too.
The tree is trimmed, cookies made, stockings hung with care. Jingling bells and yummy smells are floating through the air. Christmas Eve is coming soon, I think I hear a sleigh. Rex, I hope that you've been good, 'cause Santa's on his way. Don't worry, Rex, you're on the good boy list.
And I hope you are too. My gosh, as I said, I have a whole collection of these. Do you have stuff at your house that your family collects or does a tradition every year for Christmas? I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, so let's see. Going on with this book, now my children are all grown up. They don't read the book anymore, but I want to read the book and use it again because guess what? My children have children, my grandchildren. And so I want to read it to my grandchildren. But it was falling apart so much that I was just dared not try to read it again because I didn't want to, you know, as you can see, gosh, I have to keep it in a plastic bag to keep it in good shape, and the back is torn and it's all, you know, held together by a rubber band. So I thought, well, I'll type it into the computer. It's not that big a book. And I began to type and type and type and type, and silly me, because computers right in those days when I got that and started typing it, weren't what they are now. I forgot to save it. And I got about a third of the way through the book when all of a sudden, yep, you guessed it, I lost everything. The computer glitched and all my typing went away, and I was so sad and frustrated that I put it back in the bag and put it up on the shelf again. Gosh. Well, anyway, let's get on with the adventures of Nicholas. We're on chapter 5. Nicholas did not leave the woodcarver on Christmas Day, or the next year, or the next. He stayed on in the little cottage, which was now bright and clean and a happy dwelling for the two happy people. For old Marsden had forgotten his grouch in his daily association with Nicholas's sunny disposition. He cheerfully taught Nicholas all he knew of his difficult trade, so that as the boy grew in years and strength, his knowledge of wood carving soon matched that of his old master. Marsden bought a horse and sleigh for the trips outside of town, which were also used by Nicholas on the Christmas Eve visits to the children in the village. For although the little ones he had played with had grown up and stopped playing with toys, there were new babies in every household every year, and each one was taught to expect from Nicholas the woodcarver a little toy on Christmas morning. One bright summer morning, Nicholas was sitting on a bench outside the cottage door, carving away at a half-finished chair leg and whistling cheerfully as he worked. He was then 20 years old, a tall young man, the yellow hair a little darker, but with the same blue eyes and rosy cheeks and ready smile. He stopped his work to listen to the birds singing in the trees overhead and to enjoy the warm sunlight shining down on him. Suddenly, two children ran up to him, up the path leading to the cottage door, bursting with news. "Nicholas!" one of them panted. "Nicholas, there are 2 men in the village who've been asking where old Marsden lives. They are on their way here now. Who do you suppose they are?" They said, "Hush," said the other child. "Here they are now." The 2 men, about 15 years older than Nicholas, about 10 and 15 years older than Nicholas, were coming slowly up the path. They seemed surprised to see him working at the bench, and one of them spoke. "Excuse me, but they told us in the village that we could find Bertrand Marsden here. If we have made a mistake." No, Nicholas answered. "This is Bertrand Marsden's cottage. I'm only his apprentice. I'll call him. He has a nap every afternoon now. You see, he's getting rather old." The 2 men looked at each other with shamed eyes. "Yes, he must be old now. Don't disturb him. We'll come back." No, here he is now," said Nicholas. Marsden had appeared in the doorway and was looking from one to the other with puzzled eyes. One of the men stepped forward. "Father," he said, Father. Marston tottered a little. Nicholas put out a steadying arm. Yes, don't you remember us, Father? I'm Henrik, and this is Lans. We left you years ago, but we finally made our fortune and are ready to take you home. Take me home? Old Marsden straightened himself. This is my home, and you two are strange men to me. No, Father, answered Lans. We are your two sons. We are sorry we left you alone years ago, but boys are thoughtless, and we wanted only the adventure and didn't think how much we might be hurting you. If you'll forgive us now. The old man looked at his two sons for a long moment. Yes, of course I'll forgive you. If you'd come back a few years ago, I couldn't have done it. I have found another son. This is Nicholas, who lives with me and who does most of my work now. The sons looked at Nicholas, then back at their father again, uncertain how to go on. Finally, Henrik spoke. We've just bought a house in the next village, Father. Lans and I have a fishing boat there, and we're doing well, very well. We want you to come there and live with us. We want to make up to you for the years we were away. Marsden shook his head. No, my lads. I have my little cottage here, and Nicholas helps me with my work. I don't need anything, and I couldn't live without working. Lon answered quickly, but you could go on working in our village, Father. There's no wood carver there, and if you insist, there are many people who would give you something to do. We so want to have you. We've been planning all through our travels now, how when we came home again, and we'd take care of you, and we'd live with you and make you forget that we were heedless little boys who ran away for an adventure. And Nicholas here, why, he could easily take over the business in this village. He's as good as you, they say. He's young and probably ambitious. Why don't you give him a chance, Father? None of the arguments seemed to make much of an impression on the old man until the end. Then he listened attentively and paused a while before he spoke. Yes, he said slowly, Nicholas deserves something like this. He could do it easily. He's a bright lad. Nicholas interrupted. Don't think of me, master. If you don't want to go with them, we'll go on living here together, just as the same as before. I don't want to take your business. There, lad, said Marsden, laying a hand on Nicholas's shoulder. I don't want to leave you either, but you're young, and you should be given a chance. Besides, he paused. He looked at the two tall men standing before him, as anxious and nervous as boys, their eyes pleading silently with their father. Besides, these are my own sons, and I think they need me as much as I need them. Henrik and Lans sprang over to the old man's side. Father, does it mean you will? Marsden nodded, his head grown almost white in the last few years. Yes, I'll just move along to the next village with you, my sons, and I'll leave this cottage and my tools with my other son, Nicholas. He put a loving hand on Nicholas's shoulder, and then the four went inside to discuss how and when the move should be made. A week later, Nicholas found himself the owner of a 2-room cottage, a perfect set of woodcarver's tools, and a well-established business, which should keep him housed and fed and clothed for life. At first, he was lonely in the little cottage after Marsden had left with his sons, but soon he became interested in his work, which kept him so busy he had no time to feel alone. Then, too, there was always a child or two chattering with him or playing with little toys on the cottage floor. Nicholas divided his day now so that he spent only part of his time on the orders he received. The rest of the day and most of the evenings he worked on the toys for the next Christmas. For he now had such a long list of children, it took months to complete the set of gifts he had to make. He continued his practice, established the year he had to deliver the chest on Christmas Day, of making the rounds on Christmas Eve. And one year he was considerably surprised and touched to see that the children had hung on their doors little embroidered bags filled with oats for his horse. So now, instead of leaving toys piled up in the doorway, he put them in the little bags. Kind of like this. So it was a busy, happy little existence that Nicholas led in the woodcarver's cottage on the outskirts of the village. And as he grew older, the sounds of the children's voices lifted in their play became dearer and dearer to him, and the children, in their turn, loved to be near the tall, kind man with the light-colored hair, and whom everyone called Nicholas the woodcarver. Lorenz and Friedrich were two little newcomers in the village. Their mother and father were even poorer than most of the other families, which made them poor indeed, because nobody in the village had a great deal of money. Ever since the day of their arrival, they had been met by misfortune. Their father was a fisherman and used to be able to keep his family supplied with enough food to eat and enough fuel to keep them warm. But one day his boat had been caught in a storm, and the heavy mast had fallen on him, paralyzing him so that he had been forced to stay in bed and watch his little family grow thinner and thinner from lack of food to eat. Their neighbors gave them as much of their meager supplies as they could spare themselves, and the mother worked occasionally in the household of the squire or of some of the more well-to-do families of the village. But there were still many meals in the little cottage, which consisted solely of a piece of dried bread or fish or a dish of thin gruel. Gruel is like a watery oatmeal. Lorenz was now the man of the family, although he was only 8 years old. He built fires, shoveled the heavy snow from the cottage door, kept the house neat and clean while his mother was out working, and took care of his little brother Friedrich. One of his principal duties was going into the forest and helping the woodcutter receiving in return for his service enough wood to keep his family supplied with fuel. He rather enjoyed this task, for he met many of the little boys while he was out. Although he worked while they played, he enjoyed being with children his own age after long hours spent in the house with his sick father and 4-year-old brother. One cold winter afternoon, as he was returning from the forest with his sled piled with the wood he had helped cut, he met a merry group of boys who were building a snow fort a few hundred yards away from the cottage of Nicholas the woodcarver. Have you built a snow fort before? It's great fun. You should try it sometime. One of the boys noticed the little figure dragging the heavy sled and called out, "Ho, there, Lorenz, want to be on our side?" Lorenz paused and looked wistfully at the boys playing in the snow. "I guess not," he answered. I ought to get this wood home before nightfall." "Oh, you have plenty of time," one of them replied. "There's a good hour yet before the sun goes down, and we'll help you drag your wood if you'll stay." Lorenz hesitated and then dropped the rope of his sled and joined the group. After all, his mother was home that afternoon, so his father and Friedrich would be taken care of, and there was enough fuel in the house to keep the fire going until evening. And it was a long time since he had played in the snow, so for a merry, carefree hour, he forgot the troubles and duties of his house and was only an 8-year-old boy having a good time. When it was his turn to storm the fort, he joined his side, and with breathless, gay courage, he stormed the fort with snowballs, climbed the icy walls of the fort, and took noisy possession. Then warily kept us out of sight, watching his chance to rise now and then above the white edge of the stronghold and hurl snowy missiles at the oncoming foe, and pausing every once in a while to make himself a new supply of ammunition. It was during one of these moments, while he was busy collecting snow and packing it into firm round balls, that he heard a glad shout from both sides from his comrades inside the fort and his enemies outside. "Nicholas! Hey, Nicholas! Nicholas! Here's Nicholas!" He looked up to see the tall figure of the woodcarver approaching the group. As he came nearer, he lifted his mittened hand to wave to the boys, his rosy, kindly face beaming a welcome, his blue eyes twinkling at the sight of a good time everybody seemed to be having. Well, a snow fight," he said in his deep voice. "It's a long time since I've had one of them, and when I was a boy, we knew how to take a fort. Now, I go about that like this." He stooped swiftly and gathered up a handful of snow, and quickly packing it, shaping it into his hands, took the finished snowball and threw it with sure, accurate aim at the tallest boy behind the fort. It knocked the surprised fellow's hat clean off. And the other side, delighted with his new ally, rushed forward. Nicholas in their midst, and took the fort amidst loud shouts and hurrahs. Lawrence looked at the tall man shyly. Of course, he knew who Nicholas was. He had heard of him ever since his family had moved into the village last summer. He knew that he was the man who kept the children supplied with toys and gifts on Christmas Day. But of course, he also supposed that Nicholas only remembered the children he really knew. The snow party started to break up then, and as most of the boys had to be home before nightfall and the sun was already sinking in the west. They started towards home then, accompanying Nicholas as far as his cottage. At the gate, the woodcarver paused a moment, looking over the group with keen eyes that seemed to see everything. "Is this a new boy in the village?" he asked, laying a hand on Lauren's shoulder and looking down kindly into the shy brown eyes. "Yes, his name is Lawrence, and he has a little brother, Friedrich. And his father's paralyzed and doesn't work, and his mother..." One of the boys dug his elbow sharply into the side of the last little boy. "Now you've done it," he said angrily. "Why can't you hold your tongue? You've hurt his feelings by talking about his family right out like that. Here, I'm going after him. Come on, fellas." They ran after Lawrence, leaving Nicholas alone at the gate with a wise smile on his lips and a knowing shake of his head. Well, let's see what Nicholas does with this family tomorrow. In the meanwhile, make sure you leave your stocking out or your bag out with oats filled for Nicholas's horses, or maybe something even better coming up. Have a Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.